Welcome to the August installment of our virtual C-Dub Classics, presented by Kaiser Permanente. C-Dub Classics provides monthly health and wellness activities to Santa Cruz County residents. My name's Mimi Guinea. I'm a retired state park ranger. I'm also a Warriors season ticket holder. And I just want to take you on a walk through some of our glorious redwoods here in Santa Cruz County. We're going to take just a short walk on the Redwood Loop Trail today. It's about 8/10 of a mile, and so it's accessible to almost everyone. It's pretty level, and it's a real easy walk. For exercise, lots of people do more than that. It also creates access to many, many miles of trails here in the park. But if you just want a short walk, this is a great place to do it. Late summer is a kind of an odd time to walk through the redwoods because it's a little bit dry and dusty here. Another time you might like to take a walk is in the winter when it's raining, although that's not always the perfect time to walk. But that's when you see all the banana slugs and newts and really fun things like that. Right now it's a little bit dry and dusty, but we may still see some really exciting things on our walk today. Let's go find out. Right here is a wonderful place to see a baby redwood sprouting out of the roots of this larger redwood. And you can see both the grandeur of a big tree and the beginning of a baby tree coming up. Redwoods do tend to sprout from their root systems rather than grow from seeds. They can grow from seeds, but it's a lot harder. So they make use of the burls, which is an uncontrolled, benign growth. It also creates these lovely little fairy rings, which is particularly attractive in the redwood forest and excites an awful lot of people. When redwoods do have an opportunity to grow from seeds, the seeds come out of the cone like this. That's a redwood cone. It's not a pine cone. These are not pine trees. And that's actually specifically a female cone. The male cones are a lot smaller because they only have to hold the pollen to fertilize the seeds in the female cone. There's the seeds of a redwood tree. They're about the same size as a tomato seed. So think about the fact that these trees, like that, can grow from this little teeny seed. We're in an old growth redwood grove here in Henry Cowell, and that means that a lot of the trees, like the ones behind me, may be over 1,000 years old. The history of Henry Cowell Redwood State Park is kind of interesting. Henry Cowell came to California because of the gold rush, and he's one of the many people who made their fortunes not by finding gold, but by serving the mining community. He transported goods up to the gold country and made a heck of a lot of money. He then bought quite a lot of land in Santa Cruz County. At one point he was probably the largest landowner in Santa Cruz County, and started mining limestone, which was used to make concrete, which was used to build the city of San Francisco. His neighbor on the other side, where Roaring Camp now is, was a man named Joseph Welch in this part of the county. And in the 1930s, Joseph Welch sold 120 acres of land to Santa Cruz County to create a county park. And that's where we are right now. Later, Samuel Cowell, Henry Cowell's son and the last remaining Cowell alive, decided it would be a fitting tribute to his father to create a large park that would be named after him. And so he donated land to the state park system, actually 1,600 acres, with the understanding that the county park would be a part of this new state park to be named for his father. And thus Henry Cowell Redwoods State Park was born. If you want to live to be 1,000 or 2,000 years old, you're going to have strategies to adapt to all sorts of environmental crises, one of which would be fire. Redwoods can withstand fires because the transport system in a redwood tree to get nutrients and water is just underneath the bark in what's called the cambium layer. The heartwood of the tree can actually be burned all the way through, like in this tree, and the tree can remain alive. You can see that this tree is healing. And it could be that if we came back in 300 or 400 years, you might actually see that the entire tree has healed over. Maybe we should make a date for lunch in a few hundred years and see what progress the tree has made. I mentioned earlier that redwoods can grow from seeds, but more often grow from burls. And this tree shows really large burls moving around. Other environmental hazards, if you're going to live to be thousands of years old, would be a flood. And in this case, if there was a flood and a lot of new dirt was covering the soil here and perhaps even several feet deep, roots could grow from those burls and the tree would still be safe and viable. Redwoods rarely have roots that go more than about 8 feet deep. And you're thinking, well, how could that be? How could that support something so very, very tall? Redwoods don't have a taproot like most trees do. If you picture an apple tree, for example, generally the rule of thumb is that the taproot goes about as deep as the tree is tall. But you can imagine that there's no way you could have a taproot going 300 feet underground. So what redwoods do instead is spread their roots really, really wide, and they intertwine with the redwood roots from all the trees around them. Think about if there's a really windy day and you hold on to a friend for stability. And that's basically what the redwoods are doing. They're holding on to each other to have a whole lot of stability here in the forest. Yeah. Yeah, but this one's holding on to this one, who's holding on to this one, who's not holding on to that because that's a Douglas fir. Here's a really special spot where fire has burned through the heart of this tree, or these trees, which actually have started growing together. And so I don't know if this would be considered one tree or several trees, but it's one of the only places where we get to walk through a tree. Not only do redwood trees have special adaptations to live here in the forest, but everything else in the forest has to be specially adapted. One really great example is the spiders that live here and manage to weave little webs into the bark, so they catch anything flitting up or flitting down. This time of year with all the dust in the air, it's really easy to see where those spider webs are. And of course, it's not just redwoods that live here in the forest. There's an understory of other bushes and smaller trees, and then the ground dwellers. Things like redwood sorrel, bracken fern, sword fern, all sorts of other smaller plants that live here. that keep the soil happy. They happen to thrive in this nice acid soil that's created by the redwood leaves and cones that fall, creating what we call a duff layer. And these shade-loving plants just thrive in it. One of my favorite plants here in Henry Cowell, besides the redwood trees, are the little heart-shaped wild gingers. They have a really pretty flower in April, well, May and June. But even right now, you can recognize them by those pretty heart-shaped leaves. A very common tree in the understory in a redwood forest is the California bay or bay laurel. And you can see the leaves, which are just about the same size as a European bay. And of course, if you crush them and smell them, it's going to smell very similar to a European bay leaf. So they can be used for making your pasta sauces and things like that. This tree is one of the tallest measured trees here in Henry Cowell Redwoods State Park, and it's really accessible where you can walk around it and get a feel for just how massive it is. It takes about 30 kids to ring all the way around holding hands. So it's a really significant tree. But remember, it's not all alone because its roots are reaching out to all the other redwood trees around it to help hold it up and keep it really stable and keep it really healthy. From the back, this tree looks like just a regular, healthy, old growth redwood tree. It's named after John C. Fremont, who came through these parts long, long ago. And let's walk around the other side and see how special the Fremont tree really is. This space caused by a fire that burned for months and months and months was once used almost like an Airbnb. There was an inn just across the trail from here, and this tree was rented out for accommodations. There was a window here and an air hole for the stove, but they have healed over the last 50 or 75 years since this became a park, and it's no longer used for anything like that. After the fires last August that devastated many parts of Santa Cruz County, especially Big Basin Redwoods State Park, people have been surprised to hear that the fires are still burning deep inside trees. But you can imagine that for a fire to burn out a tree like this, it's going to be burning for months and months and months. So it's really not surprising. That's one of the reasons that the park is still closed and will be for quite a while. It's just not safe yet. If anywhere in Henry Cowell Redwoods State Park is my favorite spot, it's probably right here. I happen to just be in love with those two trees in the distance. They look almost like twins. And there's just something about the slightly twisted bark and the stateliness of those two that just, I never get tired of it. You might wonder why the bark is a little bit twisted. Sometimes you even see redwoods with a bark that ripples, almost like permed hair, curly hair. And I had a professor once who said to me, well, he's thinking that it's an adaptation to allow the trees to live longer. If you think about it, straight up and down barks or straight up and down like a piece of paper doesn't have a lot of stability. But if you can twist it, there's a lot more tensile strength. or if you can ripple it, like folding a dollar bill so that you can set it on its side, that gives it a lot more strength as well. His theory was that if we could wait 20 or 30,000 years, we might see that twisted or rippled bark becomes the dominant type of bark in a redwood tree, because those will be the trees that will have the most strength and then will reproduce the longest. A tree this size is probably well over 1,000 years old. And so you can just imagine the kind of history that this one tree has seen. Long before Western people came to this part of California, it was already an old tree. These are our ubiquitous deer here at Cowell Redwoods State Park. They're Colombian black-tailed deer. They're not terribly large, and they're very accustomed to all the people walking through. To me, this is a fantastic example of how limited we as human beings are in a place like this. I can look at this and say, is this one redwood tree? Because they're all growing out of the same root system, and so genetically they're all identical. They're basically clones of each other. Or is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, who knows how many on the other side, individual trees? Because we could cut one off and the others would still be healthy, adult, surviving trees. The limitation is ours, not theirs. They can be one and plural at the same time. We don't necessarily have a word that describes that, but that doesn't stop them from being it. Well, thanks for coming along with me today, and I hope you're inspired to come up here on your own and enjoy these redwood forests. On behalf of the Santa Cruz Warriors and Kaiser Permanente, thank you for joining our C-Dub Classics Redwood Walk today. We have activities on the last Monday of every month. For more information, visit santacruzbasketball.com/classics. And thanks for joining me here in Cowell Redwoods State Park today. Have a lovely day.